It is my pleasure to welcome you to this video and to a few minutes full of fun. It is always fun to deal with research methods, but here is even more fun as we're leaving the beaten tracks and normal statistical procedures like the t-test or regression analysis. We're dealing with the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures. Before the fun starts, I would like to highlight at this point that at the end of the video I will give you a few publications so that you have the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures described in writing, explained in writing, and also you can see how it is applied. But now, without further ado, let's dive into it. What is the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures? It is a theory to model the representation of people of their complex cognitions, so a system of complex cognitions. But these cognitions need to have an evaluative component, meaning some things are regarded rather positive or negative. I think this is rather good or this is rather bad. And such an evaluative component is inherent in attitudes. You can also say that the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures models hierarchical attitudinal systems. But it's not just drawing a lovely picture how people represent their attitudes or attitudinal systems. It is also, rather I would say foremost, it is a method to measure these systems of complex cognitions or hierarchical attitudinal systems. You can apply the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures in a wide array of social sciences. And here, please understand social sciences in the broadest sense: marketing, sociology, psychology, what have you. The theoretical and methodological basis lies within the means-end theories and the related value-expectancy theories, and especially in the Fishbein model. That's enough of the background. Let's go and have a look at the method itself. And I would like to explain the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures using an example. And this example comes from a publication I could realize with two co-authors. We were examining anti-corona measures. To be precise, we were examining how people evaluate anti-corona measures, like restrictions on outdoor activities, tips for hygiene, vaccination, and so forth. So the model we derived from literature. You see here on the top. The overall evaluation of an anti-corona measure, do I think it is rather good or rather bad, depends on the three constructs of the theory of planned behavior: attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control. In the context of the anti-corona measures, attitude can be understood as the perceived protection from the coronavirus and its consequences. The subjective norm can be understood as the willingness to fulfill the expectations of others. And perceived behavioral control in this context means how well can I integrate the anti-corona measures, tips for hygiene, vaccination, restrictions on outdoor activities, what have you, how well can I integrate these measures into my life? So the practicability of anti-corona measures. But as human beings, we are all social beings. So we're not living in our bubble. Therefore, we deduced that beneath these three constructs of the theory of planned behavior, there are the social spheres. And I would like to explain this with regard to the attitude, meaning the perceived protection from the coronavirus and its consequences. How well can the anti-corona measure protect my close family? How well I can protect my friends and my wider family? How good does this work at work, with my colleagues, and the society in general? Now, but it's not only how good does the whole thing work, it's also how important are these constructs to me, or how important are these to the individual being. So, for some, Or for one, it might be that the protection is the most important thing. For others, it's more important to fulfill the expectations of others. And for a third person, perhaps it's more important that everything runs smoothly, meaning the practicability. And again, the same comes to the social spheres. So for lots of people, for lots of us, it is most important is that my close family, my nuclear family is protected. Whilst wider family and friends is not quite as important like the close family and so forth. Or think the other way around. Think you're in a very nasty dysfunctional marriage. Perhaps then your close family is not too important to you, but your good mates with whom you have a pint in a pub and so on are more important. So the relevance of these constructs might differ between people. This is, as I said, our hypothesized model, and we say people evaluate anti-corona measures within this model more or less consciously. And with it we had three research questions. The first, as I just described, is a subjective relevance. So which relevance do the attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control, as well as the social spheres, have for the people's evaluation of anti-corona measures? Secondly, it is the quality. How well do people evaluate anti-corona measures with regard to the attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control? And then, of course, with regard to the social spheres, close family, wider family, and so forth. And the beauty of the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures is that you automatically get out norm strategies how to improve. So we can say with, I will show you later, with this method, with this procedure, we can find out what is the potential and what is the need of increasing the effectiveness, in this case, of anti-corona measures from the people's perspective. And then we can say what priority should the current effectiveness of these with what priority should the current effectiveness of these measures be secured or increased? Again, with regard to all the constructs within our model. This is where we're coming from. And now, to dive into the method, I would like to go to one part of this model, just the part of the attitude. So we have the attitude, protection from the anti-corona measure for the close family, wider family and friends, for the colleagues and society in general. The quality of the attitude itself is a calculated value that is not empirically measured within a questionnaire. We will calculate this value from the constructs below. So we first have the relevance. That's what we call in the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures, we call value, the subjective importance, relevance of the close family, wider family, and so forth. Secondly, we have the quality. How good is, in this case, the protection from the coronavirus for the close family, for the wider family, for the colleagues, and for society in general? These two aspects are measured on a continuous rating scale from 0 to 100. So the value, the importance, is measured in a questionnaire from 0 not important to 100 very important. And the perceived quality is measured in a questionnaire from 0 not good to 100 very good. Before we come to the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures, I would like to show you how the whole thing will be done with the original value-expectancy theories. So our aim is to calculate the quality of the attitude. So the top, in this case, the top level construct. And the original value-expectancy theories would multiply value and quality and then have the sum over all of them. In this case, V1 times Q1 plus V2 plus Q2 plus V3 times Q3 plus V4 times Q4. Let's do this with an example. Let's assume one of our participants set on the scale from 0 not important to 100 very important, the close family, or the protection from the coronavirus for the close family, I assign the importance of 80. The wider family is 70, colleagues 50, and society in general 50. Secondly, the second question, how good is the protection from the coronavirus for the close family? He answered with 60 on the scale from 0 not good to 100 very good. Then wider family and friends 70, colleagues at work 50, and society in general 90. If you put these values now in our equation, we would have 80 times 60 plus 70 times 70 plus 50 times 50 plus 50 times 90. That would give us 4,800 plus 4,900 plus 2,500 plus 4,500. And eventually we get an overall value for QJ, so for the attitude, of 16,700. Now we can also divide this by 4, as we have 4 constructs here, and then we'd end up with 4,175. All good, but how to interpret these values? We're out of our original scale. So remember, our scale was 0 not good to 100 very good. So now we have values that go through the roof. So how do we read these values? How do we interpret these values? No idea. Means N theory of complex cognitive structures has a solution. Happy days. And what we do, we norm the value. Let's call it the normed value. The value is the importance, to remind you. And we have the same equation we had before, like we had with the original value expectancy theories, but now we divide the value for each element of our model by the sum of all values. Again, I want to show you to make this clear on an example. So, first we sum up all the values we have here. 80 plus 70 plus 50 plus 50. If I do this, 80 plus 70 plus 50 plus 50, I come to 250. Now let's calculate the normed value for the close family. That would be 80 divided by 250 is 0.32. For the wider family and friends, the norm value is 70 divided by 250 is 0.28. For colleagues and society in general, as both have the empirical value of 50, it's the same. It's 50 divided by 250 is 0.2. And now I throw all these norm values in my equation. Norm value times quality, in our case, 0.32 times 60 plus 0.28 times 70 plus 0.2 times 50 and plus 0.2 times 90. And I come to an eventual score and an eventual result of 66.8. And now the quality, how good is the attitude, so the perceived protection from the coronavirus and its consequences overall, is 66.8. And that is back in our scale, 0 not good to 100 very good. But we don't only have the attitude, we also have the subjective norm with the subordinated constructs as well as the perceived behavioral control. So what you have to do is this procedure that we've just done. So norm value times quality, norm value times quality, norm value times quality, norm value times quality. Sum of it, that is our quality for the attitude. The same you do for the other two, for subjective norm and perceived behavioral control. So then what we have is we have a quality value for the attitude, we have a quality value for subjective norm, and we have a quality value for the perceived behavioral control. We want, however, also have a quality value for the evaluation of the overall anti-corona measures. So what we do is we use the same procedure, the same principles, the same equation that we've used on the lowest level, again on the middle level. We of course need to have measured the empirical values, or the importance on a scale from 0, not important, to 100, very important for attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control. We then again calculate the norm value for attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control. Throw into this equation the calculated quality values that we have calculated a step before. And again, norm value times quality of attitude plus norm value times quality of subjective norm plus norm value times quality of perceived behavioral control. And we have as a result the total quality of this anti-corona measure in this case. All right. What you can see with a norm value is similar to a regression coefficient. Tells you the impact a construct on a lower level has on the construct of the next higher level. We also would like to know what effect does an element on the lowest level have on the overall evaluation. In that case, for instance, what is the effect of the protection of the close family of the overall evaluation of the anti-corona measure? And for this, we calculate the total norm value. So the total norm value comes from the norm value, which always go only one step higher in this hierarchical model, from close family and the norm value of attitude to its the overall evaluation. So let's assume we have a norm value of 0.5 for attitude. And here we have a norm value from the previous example. Close family to attitude is 0.32, wider family is 0.28, colleagues at work and society in general is 0.2 each. So what we simply do then is we multiply the norm value from the lower level with the norm value of the respective element of the model on the higher level. In our case, it would be 0.32 times 0.5. So the total norm value, the impact of the close family on the overall evaluation of an anti-corona measure is 0.16. Or you can see for the next one, norm value, wider family and friends, norm value of 0.28 times norm value of attitude 0.5. 0.28 times 0.5 is 0.14. That means the impact of the wider family and friends on the overall evaluation of anti-corona measures is 0.14. And you can read it in this way. If I'm able to improve the quality of the close family by 1 on our scale from 0 not good to 100 very good, then the overall evaluation of the anti-corona measure would improve by 0.16. In other words, if I were to improve the quality of wider family and friends by 1, then the overall evaluation of the anti-corona measure would improve by 0.14. There you can see, as I said before, the norm values and the total norm values can be seen or understood very similar to a regression coefficient. Now to the third research question, if you remember, the norm strategies. How or the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures derives norm strategies, how to improve. And this is the result from our research for the restrictions on outdoor activities. What you do first is you put in the mean to divide into quadrants. So the mean of all our elements on the y-axis, which is the total norm value here, so the importance, how important is something to the people, is a bit more than 0.08. The quality mean, that means overall the elements of our model, the quality is something around 75. So again, and this makes hopefully clear, on the y-axis we have the total norm values, which is associated with the relevance and the importance, if you will, the importance for the people. The x-axis is associated with the quality, how good is something perceived by the people. Now for these 4 quadrants, you can deduce norm strategies. First of all, comes the norm strategies, your potential of optimizing. In this case, let's go for the perceived behavioral control. So how practical are these measures for my life? And here, in the context of the wider family and friends, you have an optimization potential here, optimizing potential of 25% roughly. Assuming that perfect quality, that is what we want to achieve. So we have room for improvement of about 25%. But now to the norm strategies. So in the first quadrant, the top left, these elements in this quadrant are highly relevant to the people. That means we have a high potential for increasing these. If we increase the effectiveness of these elements, make them better, then the effect on the overall evaluation of our object, in this case the restrictions on outdoor activities, will increase massively. Furthermore, compared with the average, we are performing rather poorly. So we are below average. That means we have a high potential, but we have also a high need for improving these elements of our model. And that means our norm strategy is we should increase the effectiveness of these aspects with the first priority. Now let's go to the second quadrant on the top right. Look at the x-axis. Our quality is above average, so we are already good. That means our need for improving is not as high. We cannot improve so much. But the priority must be high here, or firstly saying the potential of these elements is very high, as they are above average important to the people. That's referring to the y-axis. That means, as we're already good, we should secure, primarily, we should secure the effectiveness of these aspects with the first priority, even though we have a bit of optimizing potential. But we're going with a strategy towards securing the effectiveness with the first priority. On top, the bottom left quadrant, we are performing rather poorly on the x-axis. That means we have a high need for improving the effectiveness. But on the look at the y-axis, these elements are not really important, or not as important to the people. So we should increase the effectiveness, but with a lower priority, with second priority. And then finally, the bottom right quadrant, we are above average in our quality. We are relatively good, happy days, so we should secure the effectiveness. Well, this is not too important to the people. This is again the y-axis, meaning we should secure effectiveness with a second priority. I want to give you another example to make, or hopefully make clear how this whole thing works. Here, it's another study with 2 co-authors I did, and it was about the evaluation of food retailers before and towards the end of the COVID-19 pandemic with longitudinal study. So food retailers like Tesco's, Marks and Spencer's, what have you, Sainsbury's and so forth, how good do people evaluate such a food retailer? That depends on performance categories. what can food retailers do? They can have a good product range, the services might be good, the pricing is good, the location appeal, and their communication. But that's very general. So these performance categories depend on the performance elements. Right? The product range depends on the width of the product range, the depth, the product quality, and since quite a few years now, are there socially responsible products? Or if you go, for example, to another one, the pricing depends on the overall price level, what was discounts, how is customer loyalty cards paying out, and what are my payment options, and so forth. And again, our research questions. Here, what relevance do the performance categories and performance elements have for the evaluation of a food retailer? What quality have these elements have, and what quality does the food retailer overall has? That was the second research question. And the third one, again, how can we, rather how should we optimize these elements of a food retailer? And here is the final result matrix and the norm strategies. And as I said, it's a longitudinal study. So we have measured one that was in 2019 and the second measure in 2022. So with the bubble that's filled is the second measure, and the bubble that's not filled is the first measure. And again here, so we don't have, of the performance elements, we don't have any element in the top left quadrant, and we don't have anyone on the bottom right quadrant. So here it means food retailers are advised to secure the effectiveness or the quality of the location appeal, the product range, and the pricing. And that's first priority. But there are weaknesses like services and communication, and with a second priority, they should increase the effectiveness of these. And you can go to the lowest level of our model. And here you can see, again, top right quadrant, all these elements. I should secure the quality or the effectiveness with first priority. What you find here in the bottom right quadrant, secure the quality with the second priority. With the second priority, I should improve the quality or the effectiveness of the elements you find there. So I don't want to go through all of them. If you're interested, have a look at the publication and read this in detail. As I said at the start, I would like to give you a few references, a few articles they can read and see in writing what is the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures and how it is applied. As at the moment, and since a few years now, I'm based in Germany. Unfortunately, the development of the model, I've published this or written this in German, so I'm very sorry for that. However, there's no need to be said. You also find very, I would say, thorough and quite detailed descriptions of the method in the three publications I've listed here. First of all, the publication I've shown you here, How People Evaluate Anti-Corona Measures for Their Social Spheres. This article you find also free to download, and you can find access to this through my website, Godbersen.online. Second one, Happy Days, is about commercial cleaning services. It is a good article, I would say a solid article, I'm saying a good solid article, but what is even more interesting is the second example I've briefly shown you here, food retail, and that's published in 2003. Again, have a look at this to understand or have a description of the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures in writing and see how it is applied. So I strongly recommend, firstly, read this food article, and secondly, go to the Corona measures article. And we're at the end, and I hope you had some fun and more. I hope that you now have an idea what the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures is. And of course, I hope you will apply this method in your research. And therefore, for this, I wish you all the best. Of course, wish you all the best in general, and for whatever research you're doing, but special super best for you if you apply the means-end theory of complex cognitive structures. All right, take care and all the best.